Everyone. It's Allison here. Welcome to class. I'm so excited to, oh my goodness, talk about one of my favorite things. This is really exciting and honestly, it's this time together that I'm so looking forward to really delve into some of these deeper concepts in the the life, the work of Hildegard of Bingen and how it really feeds and nourishes our own the unfolding process of our own lives and creativity and vocation. So if you are here, I want to make sure that you can hear me. So if anyone just say hi in the comments and let me know that you can hear, that would be fabulous. I will try to get that chat available. So I'm just going to take a minute to double check that. I'm using a streaming service and want to make sure that I can chat with you. Oh, good. Hi. It just says, whoever says hi, I can hear you. It says Facebook user. I'm sorry if I can't see your names. Oh, well, here we are. It's so great to have you. Yes, I'm so glad. So, my friends, I have a beautiful, beautiful topic. It is, oh, okay. Hi, Maria. Hi, Missy. So Maria's on Facebook. You're on YouTube. Don't see anything happening on Facebook. It's in the group, in the Encounter Hildegard group. So hi from Winnipeg. I wonder if that's Monica. Um, I'm so happy to have you all here. So we have a really rich contemplative topic, but it is the kind of thing, this kind of sort of space that I want to create today that is really not only looking at this concept of viriditas, or what I call sacred creativity, and how it's not just a concept, but it's something that really permeates our real life. And that's one of the beautiful gifts that I've received as, this student of Hildegard, is to really see the ways in which these archetypal concepts really play out in our lives and help us really into fulfillment of our purpose through art, through life, through relationship. And here's where I want to take us today. First, I just want to introduce this topic and offer you just a little story, and then I want to get into this cycle, this creative process, a cycle of creativity, sacred creativity, and I'll explain that in a moment. But I also want to send you away with not only a way to understand how this operates in our life and work and in our art. Let's just consider all of those things the same. For me, they are. But to identify the places where we get stuck, where we get caught, and inner dialogue and the shadow that comes up when we enter into an agreement to, say, fulfill our purpose, to see a project through, to birth something new into the world through the creative process, but where we bump up against ourselves and what that looks like. And then to also understand what we are here to learn, to grow, and to exercise and to practice as a way of moving through the blocks. We all have blocks. It's part of the process. It just is. So here I wanted to just guide us into this conversation with a little, I'm going to take you down my own memory lane. And I want to show you something I just thought of, which was really the most amazing way that life unfolds. And when we talk about sacred creativity, I'm talking about what Hildegard refers to as greening through this concept of viriditas, that we have within us the capacity to fulfill through our own creations, not only the fulfillment of our lives through our works, but in the way we live our life and the way in which we serve others, serve God, and bring into really life, manifesting into life, into the world, into planet Earth, greater love, greater connection, greater light, more joy. And it's really through this manifestation of this divine love, through the unique blueprint of yourself, that we are meant to realize this green potential. And it's really through the steps of our own process that we discover the ways in which we're challenged to do that. But also, not just the challenges, but realizing the form or the concept or the purpose of how something is coming through and what it looks like. And not only what it looks like, but actually fulfilling that thing. Yeah, taking that activation and moving it into the world. And there's a lot going on there. So I wanted to just sort of give us some perspective and just tell a story. I never in a million years thought that my life would be taking me into this present moment where I'm speaking about a medieval nun's concept of viriditas, and the way in which we are fulfilling our lives with greater purpose and meaning. So I wanted to show you a picture. I was going through some files that my parents unloaded on me as they moved their home from high school. So this is me as a nun. This is my senior year in high school. And I thought, oh, it's the sound of music. I love the sound of music. And this is such a beautiful archetypal example of Maria's viriditas, as she accepts the call and then has to make really challenging decisions. But here I am as the Mother Superior, and I was so mad that I was the Mother Superior. I was so mad. I thought, how could they cast me as the mother, as the nun? I want to be Maria. But we all want to be Maria, maybe. And here I am singing I'm singing my favorite things, which in the musical version is sung with the Mother Abbess and Maria. I don't know what I'm doing with that pencil in my hand, but there you go. And so life unfolds. I get cast. I sing the show. I sing my heart out. And one day in French class, I'm called to the principal's office. And I thought, this is not good. I've never been called to the principal's office. And of course, we all know that must mean something bad is going to happen. Well, I get called into the principal's office and he says, the school was so overwhelmed with your performance and how moving it was, and we'd like you to sing that song at our graduation. And so here I am singing at the high school graduation. Yours truly, standing in front of my first big crowd, scared out of my wits. And I remember thinking that must have not gone very well. And then I look at myself in this picture and I think, that's beautiful. I rose to the challenge. And this, younger version of a challenge I was young. But again, just sort of being reminded of the ways in which we are called to rise up and bring forth our own unique message. So let's get back to this concept. And if you have any questions or thoughts or comments, please just drop them in the chat. I love to respond. So really this sort of green concept, this greening, we see this in many areas of Hildegard's oeuvre. We see it in the way she writes in the visionary works, in the songs, and in other ways through letters. But we get a hint of this too in the illuminations. And we see this sense of the activation of liveliness, of aliveness through our person and through our works. And of course, all of that being sourced from God, Creator, and how it moves through us in the unique way that we are human. And I would add to that, of course, who you are as you. Yeah, a unique blueprint that is you. And we see this certainly in the way that Hildegard's life unfolded. And I often look at her biography as this another blueprint. Yeah. We also see this in the example of Mary at the Annunciation. And this is a wonderful example, and I want to jump into that for a moment. It's another sort of archetypal understanding of the creative process, the sacred creative process of heeding a call, receiving, and responding. And here's what I mean. That when it comes to manifesting your own creative spark, your own creative potential into the world, we have at first this seed, the seed that is you. That is what is in potentia. Yeah. And there we have this spark, and the spark is it's time to create. It's time to do something. It's time to move. And the first step really then is what I see in this process is being open. Are you open? And now taking the example of Mary being the most humble person and to be a grateful and loving servant of God. Now, you may or may not respond to that archetype, and that's fine, but it's something that we know and understand. She was open. And in that sense, what I mean is, and I'm going to translate this into our lives, how are we open to our own creative unfolding? The unfolding of our purpose, of our life's purpose, of our creative unfolding. And what is the first thing that Mary says? She says, who am I? Who am I? That I should be the person to undertake that thing that you're asking of me, or that spark of a creation, or that desire that you have. Who am I? And how does that show up? This is the shadow of that call. Are you open? I'm not enough. I don't know enough. I am not ready. No, that's not quite it. I don't have enough skills. I'm not sure. I don't know if I can. I'm not X, Y, or Z, and fill in the blank. And that is really that shadow of that response to being open and willing is I don't have this core acceptance of my own worthiness to undertake what you're asking of me. That's not me. Is that inner response from ego. And of course, what we really know is that you would not be the one being asked if that were not for you. Okay? That's the golden truth behind that call. There is a reason that you are the one being asked by Spirit to fulfill this thing. Looking at Hildegard, she receives this cosmic knock on the door when she's 42, midlife, 42. And Spirit says, it's time. And what does she say? Are you sure that I'm the right person for this? And then, of course, there's much resistance to that initial prophetic call. And you and I both know that there have been probably 1 million times in our lives when we have an idea or we want to do something meaningful, and the first thing we get is our own red flag. Who am I? And what is really the process of working through that, of coming into self-acceptance and acceptance of true worth to say, I will take up the baton. I will take up the mantle. And as a response, this sort of mantra that I want to invite you into, when you feel that something come through you, that urge, that desire, that ambition, and you put up your hand, what we can learn to say is, I don't know how. That's a real fear. But I know it's possible. I know it's possible. So instead of throwing up the door and turning the gate, we open the door. And we admit that we don't have all the answers. I do it all the time. And we learn how to cultivate a response that keeps the door open, that keeps our fertile mind, heart, and spirit open, so that the seed begins to germinate, right? We have the greening, the activation that comes through you, and we'll start to allow this process to unfold. And let me go into the next sort of piece here. That as you become open, you really are going to activate this receiving. And that's the second sort of piece of this cycle of, allowing the sacred to move through you, that you are now in a state of receiving, to think about becoming this container for intuition, for guidance, for the way in which you are going to start to gain clarity and guidance, and to really understand how whatever it is that you are desiring is going to take form, right? It's the what and it's the how. I have an idea. I don't know what it is, and I really, really want this to happen. And now we allow ourselves to begin the unfolding, and how it comes through what I call sacred mind. Because the shadow or the resistance, hello from Löwenstein, Germany. Oh, I wish I could see your names, my friends. I'm going to have to figure that out. But here we are talking about when we are open, we are going to start to receive the guidance and the insights and the inspiration for moving that creation into form. Yeah. This is how we start to cultivate. We start to bring into our field what is going to be unfolding according to your desire, and you're heeding that call, right? So, oh my goodness, what happens here, and this is a very, 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 very common thing. When we start to get all the ideas, we become a little impatient. And our mind is like, let's get it going. Why isn't it here yet? I should have this all figured out. And that shadow response is all going to stem from the conditioning of our mind. And the mind is going to say, what's going on here? And what happens? We start to experience doubt. We lose inner trust. And because we're sort of using our mind, which is the way we have been conditioned to do everything, to start to suss it all out, we start to lose trust in that process of receiving wisdom, guidance, clarity, inspiration. all of these concepts, of course, that are associated with the divine feminine. And indeed, the act of receiving is this aspect of yin, that which is the feminine, that which is, we become the receptacle of the creation through our own creativity. It's very, very beautiful when you just allow. And unfortunately, we think time's a wasting. All this allowing, it's taking time. And I don't mean 3 years or 10 years. I mean just space and time. Or rather, timelessness. That we sort of purposefully ignore the imaginary clock ticking over our heads so that we have that space, that inner space, to allow the beautiful unfolding or flowering of what is coming through us. Timelessness. And, the key shadow theme really of being in a space where you're able to allow that to come through you is that impatience. And, on the other side of that, how we really trust, how we really know, to know that something is really destined for us, or is really going to be the form. And I think a lot of creatives are really, really attached to, what does my creation look like, smell like, taste like? How many players, how many pieces of paper, what are the chapters? Like, it's all about the form. And here we cannot rush the form, but rather be the open vessel for that beautiful crafting process to be allowed to come through. And when you do, it is a holy miracle that your mind just cannot understand. And if that makes sense, I'm glad. Hi, Ava. I'm so glad you're here. So, my friends, really getting into this understanding that in order to have this process of unfolding, we learn how to be open. And I'm pointing here to my crown, how to be open and how to receive. That we set aside the busyness of the mind and the impatience of the mind. And we practice this skill. And the skill is learning how to consciously embody your intuition. Yeah. On top of that, how to integrate your mind with your body and your spirit. That's the mind, body, spirit. That's the trifecta that we all seek. I'm glad, Maria. Thank you. So to be able to grow in trust, and my friends, I think something that I've really learned is not how to succumb to doubt, but to spy it for what it is. That doubt, in some ways, it's like a guidepost. The doubt is actually you needing to catch on to yourself. I am putting up some kind of preconditioned notion that I should have this freaking figured out already. When something is new, you're not supposed to have it figured out. That's why it's new. Oh, but how uncomfortable is that? I'm just reading some of your comments. Thank you, my friends. Missy, I really love the imagery presented here. I see an open door and beautiful greenery. Oh, that's beautiful. I see a flower blooming in its own time and its own beauty. That really resonates with me, Missy. Thank you. And so as we're available for this process, this unfolding greenness, the growth process, like any plant, to sort of get to this next sort of transition. And here there is a third phase, but there really is an important transition here, and I want to lay this in your field. Because this, for me, has always been the trickiest part. And I would probably guess that would be for most people too. Because once we really sort of learn how to receive and trust and grow that trust in that unfoldment of what is moving through you, whether in your life or through your art or your creative process, that we then come to this point where it's like, okay, it's time. It's time. It's time to launch. It's time to write the post. It's time to talk to your community or ask for something. And this is really what I call this activation phase. Yeah. Where you are then recognizing that you have form, you have all the what and the how, and now it's the when. Oh, right. We're kind of bringing the clock back in here, but I'm not talking about in 5 years or 10 years. I'm just talking about when you make the commitment to now release the form into the world. And that's a big deal. Capital B, capital D. And it's really now about this response to all that you've received and have allowed yourself to be open to as the vessel. And we are responding, we're saying yes. This is a cosmic yes. Hildegard gives a cosmic yes to that call that says, you are the one to pick up the pen and to tell what you see. You, not anybody else. And thank God for this gorgeous life that she lived, that we can say, my goodness, what a triumph. What a triumph of spirit, but really, and this is one of the reasons, my friends, that Hildegard is my true personal hero. What an example of surrender to divine will. God says, it's you. And she says, I'm scared. And God says, it's still you. And finally, what happens? She relents. She says, okay. What does Mary say? Behold the handmaid of the Lord. I'm going to cry. That's a beautiful moment to say yes. And then what happens? You say yes. You could say no. And sometimes we say, wait a minute. I'm thinking about it. Hildegard did the same thing. Wait a minute. I really need to check this. Is it safe to proceed? And here, I think the word safety is really important here. When we finally respond to what that call is, and it is time to move from the inner world into the outer world. That's the transition from yin, to receive, to yang, to act. And to move that creation through the threshold into the world, that membrane. What happens then? We are really going to see this manifestation come into fulfillment. And that's honestly the most fun part, but it's also the most terrifying, as we all know, like really coming out into the world. And what happens? What happens? This is when, the shadow side of that response of moving into the world, it is just capital F, fear. This is deep egoic fears. This is deep shadow that's going to say, careful. And if you think about Hildegard, there really were consequences to doing what she was doing. There were consequences of being branded as a heretic, of death, of punishment. Now, we here in the 21st century don't have to worry about being burned at the stake. Thank God. Thank God. But those fears are still deeply embedded within us, in our collective, in our DNA. We are scared of rejection and punishment and betrayal and succeeding and failing. And we are freaking afraid of change. right? Who am I when this happens? Because I'm not going to be the same. And I don't know what that looks like. And again, it's this fear of the new. I don't know what I'm going to be. And I don't know if it's going to succeed. And who am I and what will people think? Right. And that really comes up into this sort of timeline where we hit that activation phase and then we want to move out into the world because we know we have to. You know you have to. But you meet that waiting and the frustration ensues. That you want to. And that sort of shadow theme is just frustration. Until you say another yes. And you surrender your own will, or rather the will of the ego, to God's will. And that is a deeply sacred moment. And that is a moment, if only we had more practice in this moment, where you feel this rush of love and support from spirit, from the universe. And it's a reminder and a reassurance that it's okay, kid. It's okay. You're doing well. You're doing well. And we know that beyond that point, as we've responded, we keep practicing coming into that space where we meet fear. But on the other side of that fear is the cultivation of your own knowing through faith. That trust in self is relying in trust in spirit and God. And that we learn how, and this is the practice, that we cultivate that inner wisdom and that inner knowing. And we continually come back to that as a touch point. We've learned that the mind isn't the place to go. And we continually practice coming back into that place of knowing. And yes, we are moving, we are in action, there's the wind in our sails, but we're also not rushing. We're observing ourselves from this beautiful neutral place where what is unfolding. And if you are a saint, you may be practicing not being attached to the outcome. Good luck with that. It's really hard. but having faith in this process. And that's the most important part. That we surrender to the process of this creative unfolding. And that indeed, when something that you desire in a truly sacred way that is sourced from God or your higher self, that we do enter into this commitment to life, to the creation, to the unfolding, and the fulfillment, ideally. And my friends, that is a calling. And it is also capital W work, deep work, to be in the space of that unfoldment. I think that's a word. I just made it up. And when we do, the satisfaction at the soul level, not only the personal satisfaction, but the understanding that this work, as we receive internally, is also being received externally. And that the world is going to indeed benefit. And yes, that may be one person, or it may be 1 million people. It's easy to get attached to those things. But it really is about you. Really, I want to sort of bring this back, that you are the vessel of the sacred work. And you may or may not have every single tool right now to make that perfect. However, it is more important that you honor the fact that you are the vessel and that what you desire is the seed, and what is all of you is that potential for that to blossom and grow and be fulfilled and serve through the unfolding. And that is indeed a sacred process. I use Hildegard and Mary as, again, like archetypal examples because we know them and we love them. But it's also understanding yourself and knowing your sticky spots. Yeah. And being patient and kind and compassionate through the unsticking. But my hope today, my sincere hope, is to be able to extract some parts of this process so it doesn't just feel like you're underwater and messing up or having a hard time, but to really be able to see the different aspects of the process and to understand and to know where you are and how you may need a little help or how you may unstick yourself or talk to someone that can help unstick you, because sometimes we all need that too. So it's really about this unfolding of desire through you in honor of the sacredness of who you are and honoring the God above and the godliness within you through your life, through your work, through your art, through your voice, through your pen, through your body, through your relationships, etc., etc., etc. That for me is the nature of viriditas, aliveness, sacred aliveness through the unfolding of our lives, which are a creation, in addition to our creations. And they dance and interweave together, which is a lovely thing. So, my friends, this is the first of this series of classes because I think it's really important work, and I love to understand Hildegard's works in a new way because they teach us so much, but it also really teasing apart these concepts so that they are understandable, digestible, actionable, realizable. And I was thinking of calling this sort of time like a green class. I'm not wedded to that yet, but it's a class nonetheless. And I also want to invite you to offer any questions or any other observations. And what I also invite you to do is to take a moment, whether now or at another time, to acknowledge like how far you've come. I'm just going to hold this up again. To acknowledge who you've been and what you've done and how did that feel? And to know that you've been in a place where that's happened before, and how is that showing up right now for you? Because there is no time like the present to activate your desire into the world. Yes, thank you so much for being here with me. This is truly a joy, and I invite you to comment either now or later if you have something that comes to you, or send me a DM if you have an idea or something that is coming to you, and I want to send you a blessing on your own unfolding and wish you all the best, and to see yourself as the plant that is unfolding in its own beautiful way. Judgment from others can be so devastating and paralyzing. I couldn't agree more. Indeed. So judgment from others is going to really, that stickiness that we feel is going to really come into some deep wounds of the ego. And that's the place where we can really learn how to protect ourselves by holding back. And that definitely will cause so much resistance or drag in the creative process because we've got that loop, that fear loop. And so it's learning how to come out of the loop that is coming up, bubbling up from the ego, but that's coming through in thoughts and thought blocks too. So coming into union with spirit and ultimately reckoning, with shadow of things people said. Oh my God, speaking of high school, what a terrible time. We all have the places where we've received conditioning and learning how to move through. And that's the way through. You're welcome. The blessing of the unfolding, the process, yes. Thank you, everyone. I'm so grateful to spend this sacred time with you. Makes me so excited. And I am planning next week a song class. So we'll look at one of Hildegard's songs and we'll have more details about that. And I'm so grateful for this time in union with you. And I'm sending you another blessing. Be well, go forth, create in your own life. I believe in you. Blessings, everyone. Bye.